So last week we discussed about, reasons why we repeat really unhealthy or unhelpful or even destructive patterns that we picked up on in our family of origin or even just throughout, you know, our years in society or past relationships. So today I'm just hopping on to talk about 4 ways to start healing those dysfunctional patterns because life is just so much better when we engage in healthier patterns, healthier relationships, and just a healthier way of being. So first, there's this quote that says, we repeat what we don't repair and we call it fate, right? And I say this pretty frequently just because it's not always fate. Like you impact your fate, right? Like definitely fate is something and we all have luck. And at the same time, don't forget the power that you have to impact what actually is happening and what's going on around you. Because sometimes we think like, oh, I'm not really impacting or this is just what's happening. It's true. And at the same time, like there are changes that you can experience and you can impact to experience in your life. And I gave actually in the beginning some examples of clients. Obviously, I changed the information about the shifts that they experienced when they did their own inner healing work. I gave an example of someone, Cassandra, who she began really working on her inner self-worth and speaking up, and how her boss suddenly became a lot more attentive and valued her input. And it wasn't like he knew what she was doing, and it's not that he changed overnight, but there was a shift in the dynamic. Another one about Sally, and I titled it Adult Emotional Nurturance, and how she had found that in the past her husband was kind of like passive and shut her down when she was looking for nurturance, but in her own work she realized that she was really asking for love from a child part, and he would get overwhelmed and flooded with, I can't give you what you need. And as she did her work and then asked for connection from a more adult self, he was able to give her connection from more of an equal platform. And he felt happier and more fulfilled because he can make his wife happy. And she felt more confident in, wow, I can actually get my needs met. And then there was another one, Daniel speaking up and finding love, where he had learned for years just never to speak up. So he would get into relationships and then just ghost his partner or just pull out last minute, leaving the girl confused. And then he did some work on actually knowing about what his needs and wants are. And then was able to get into a relationship that felt comfortable. But along the way, he had to say no to difficult experiences, but he got better and better at it. And about Deborah was the last one, about someone learning to set boundaries and learning about her worthiness. Really just shifting the relationship she had and creating new ones. So these are really how I gave examples just to give you some real-time examples about how doing this work really impacts quality of life and about self-worth and impacts all areas of who we are, because that's what real healing is about. So now I'm just going to dive into the 4 tips that I gave. So the first one I wrote is know your patterns plus take accountability. Now, sometimes we don't even know what our patterns are. So it's like, oh, I could probably use some work. I could probably improve something, but I don't really know what my patterns are. So really getting curious and taking some time to really know what your pattern is. Is it that you shut down? Is it that you ignore someone? Is it that you go silent? Is it that you try but you give up prematurely? Is it that I don't know, like you're the one who's a little bit aggressive and, that you kind of are like a bulldozer and you don't really allow other people to connect or speak up. And so you're not really having deep, meaningful relationships. And it's important to first get clear on what it is, because then you can take accountability. And accountability is the first step to making a change. So that's the first step, right? So I wrote here, like, when you feel out of control, do you attempt to control the other person? Do you try to micromanage your lover, your partner, your child? Or do you get kind of passive and disengage when you really need to address a stressor or a conflict, right? And then the next thing I wrote about is regarding this and actually identifying what it is and taking accountability, you want to differentiate in here and now, right? If your thought or behavior or your pattern is a response to something in your reality, or if it's your mind and body's response to a fear or threat based in the past. So I'm pointing this out only just because sometimes, most of the time I should say, our patterns are conditioned responses that we learned to face and respond to something that was happening around us. And one of the biggest things to learn is, like, maybe it was good for you to be passive, maybe you needed to become somewhat controlling, maybe you had to be manipulative to get through something that was frightening or confusing back then. But is that happening right now? Or are you interacting with people and the world from a past level of functioning, a past, form of defense or a skill that really helped you get through that you don't need to here and now. So you really want to help differentiate, because sometimes we engage with the world today as if it was the past, and that's where we get into trouble, right? Patterns in the past were helpful. Patterns from the past today, sometimes not so helpful. And the next thing that I wrote about is clarify your family of origin themes and identify the underlying wounds. So it's important for us to know, like, what are our family of origin themes? Now, that doesn't always mean that, oh, yeah, my family's dysfunctional. Is your family dysfunctional? It's just themes, right? There's themes that could be like, it's really important in my family for the men to make a lot of money. It's really important for the women to be beautiful. It's really important for you to raise children and not complain about it. It's important for us not to talk about emotions, right? What are emotions, right? In some family of origin themes, it's all about, respecting the elders and not really having your own voice until you have earned that title or position based on accomplishments or family size, right? It could be religious beliefs. It could be different themes that really infiltrated your home, and some can be really good, and some could have made a negative impact on your development. So the reason it's important to identify that and identify the underlying wounds is because awareness only gets you so far, right? You might get to an awareness and notice a behavior, but you want to actually understand then, okay, what's the wound that it caused on me? So maybe if the adults were all respected above a certain age, and that was okay, and that was a theme, but if it impacted me because I had something to say and I was shut down, then that might be something that's where my wounding is, right? Because if I was shut down, then right now in life, either I speak over people or I just never speak up, right? So you want to look at what your thing is, or was there a lot of dishonesty and lack of trust? So that was a theme, and then I had to learn to become a dishonest person or manipulate, right? Or just be fearful that everybody around me is lying and never trust anyone. So you want to look at what the underlying wound is based on that theme, okay? And then the next thing I wrote about is heal the unmet need and learn skills so you can have healthy relationships. You have to heal the core of the wound if you want lasting change, right? This is the way to bring a fully integrated, wholesome self to today, because healing isn't simply trying on a new skill. It's about like deep healing and integrating newfound strength. So healing your unmet need is important, because if you usually, an unmet need along with that will come this pattern that you might engage with that will bring in like feelings of shame, abandonment, rejection, or other painful experiences that you experienced in the past. And, good trauma-focused therapy or good family of origin therapy, right, where your therapist is attuned to help you really get to know those parts, help those parts heal, learn about the value, learn about the pain, learn about the grief, and then learn about the hope and the possibility, right? Healing is never just about, oh, that was so sad. You grieve in order to then heal and feel better. So by healing that unmet need, you can kind of undress from that pattern, because awareness only takes you so far. But when you actually dive in to that part that learned the pattern as a survival defense, and then you could do some healing work with it, then those parts can actually shake off that, that learned response. I can actually practice in a way of being. A lot of times this is practiced in therapy or throughout the sessions, and people will see wow, this is foreign territory, but it's getting me much better results. And the other thing I wrote is about learning skills. Many times you'll have to learn new skills. People will say oh my goodness, all my relationship skills that I've had or I learned, I'm realizing they're ineffective or they're not being helpful to me. And sometimes you got to get some books on communication, or, engage in some counseling, in relationship counseling, or really practicing some, role playing or learning about what are healthy interactions like. And the last pointer is that practice patience and kindness to yourself. So with all this being said, at the end of the day, it takes a lot of mental energy. It takes a lot of emotional stamina and really consistency and trust to really engaging in this healing work. So if you're in the place where, you are processing a lot or you are noticing a pattern, don't expect yourself to change overnight, because then you're going to set yourself up for feeling disappointment, and that's just not good, right? So just, I would say, be patient. You are going to experience change if you're really committed and consistent. And I would offer kindness to yourself, because no matter what positive or not positive, helpful or destructive behaviors you've engaged in, by you taking accountability, wanting to be clear, and wanting to help heal yourself and be a more present, wholesome human being, you're doing yourself a gift. You're giving yourself a gift, and you're doing a favor to all of those who get to interact with a more wholesome version of you. So those are some tips. And yeah, if you are looking to take a few steps, I invite you to try some of these on and see how it is. Hope you have a great day.